Hi guys, let's look at queen versus pawn endgames today. By pawn endgames, I mean 7 rank pawn, because otherwise it would be too easy, right? When you have a queen, and it wouldn't be worth studying. Queen versus 7 rank pawn, there are two cases basically. There are the easy ones, which involve central pawns and knight pawns, which we're gonna see first. And then there are the sort of like harder ones where you need to know a specific technique to win that. That involves rook pawns and bishop pawns, because then there will be a stalemate motif. Let's start with the simple ones, and let's go really quickly because I think more times need to be spent discussing the hard ones. So here our opponent is white. White goes that way. This pawn is one step away from queening. And yeah, basically the technique, which I'm sure you've seen, is just to keep checking the white king until it goes in front of the pawn, right? Check. And here we can fork the king and the pawn. So if the king step away, then the pawn falls. So the only way to go for white is to step in front of the pawn. And when it steps in front of the pawn, then black got a tempo, and now black king can approach. And then you just rinse and repeat the same thing over and over again. Here we go, check again. Just go same thing again and again. I don't think I even like put the sort of like best case for white here, but yeah, I think you know what I mean. It's pretty obvious here. What's the technique would be. Okay, so we went through that really quickly, and the only thing you have to remember here, I think, is just this technique here where the queen forks the pawn and the king, and then the king has to move in front of the pawn, and then the king can approach, right? Although, I mean, I'm not sure if you have to remember it, it comes pretty intuitive to most people. So again, with the central pawns and the knight pawns, there are almost no exception. 99.9% of the time, if the queen can give a check to the king, then black will win. The only exception when it involves central pawns and knight pawns is, I said 99.99%, right? So the 0.01% of the cases where it's a draw is involve a position like this, when basically the black queen have no check, right? I mean, obviously it can check here, but then the white king would just take it. It's silly. And there are no other checks. Here it's a draw because you cannot check the white king, and then there is no tempo for black basically, and what will just promote next. Okay, now let's talk about the hard cases, which involve rook pawns and bishop pawns. They are hard because there is additional defense white can perform, which is the stalemate motif. So let's say we proceed as before, giving a check until the white king goes in front of the pawn, so that the black king can assist the black queen. But here it's stalemate, right? Unless the queen move from the g file, so we don't have a free tempo for the king. So here the correct way to go is to actually let them promote, believe it or not, and then checkmate them. So we go e7 check, g8. Here we don't keep checking because we just end up in perpetual check mode, right? But here the right way to go is king e6, believe it or not. Because even though white queens and give us a check actually, then we can go to king g6. And here, as strange as it may look, white runs out of check. White can give a check here and give a check there, but of course, if the white queen just go there, we just take, right? Because it's defended by the queen and the king. So here white runs out of check, and then our next move is just queen f7 checkmate, and there is nothing white can do about it. Okay, so what are the exact rules basically in this position when black can win, when black can use the king? Because if the king is too far, let's say the king is here, then it will be a draw, right? Because again of the stalemate motif. So the rule here is that if the black king in this position, when the pawn is one step away from queening, if the black king is within 2 steps from this square, f7 and g6, then black should win. Otherwise, it's a draw. I've shown you previously when the black king is here and then it used this square to checkmate the white king. It's 2 steps away. Now let's look at another case when the black king is here and only 2 steps away from f7 and not g6. The right move here is king e7, and here white usually promotes, but let's say white doesn't promote, well then that is actually even easier, right? Let's say king g8, then queen g8 check, king h8, queen f6 check, king g8, and queen f8 check. Checkmate actually, yeah. So white usually promote. Let's rewind. Again here king e7, and let's say white promote to queen. That's fine, we let it promote. Okay, now what we aim to do is actually the same as previously. If you remember when the black king is here and white king is here and here, and the queen control the 7 file. We're just going to do it on the other side, if that makes sense. So what we want to do is to make sure that the queen now controls the G file, and this king would be on the H file with the queen here, and then we want our king to be on the F file. Again, same motif, just sort of like sideways. And the way to achieve it is to keep checking the white king until it goes to that position. So here, queen e5 check, and then king g8. Now we try from this side, check, and now we're free to give a check here. And here the only way for the white kings to go is obviously h7. And now we can simply go f7, king f7. And as you can see, it's the exact same motif as before, but sort of like on the side instead of, it's like horizontally instead of vertically. The white queen cannot give a check to our king. White has a tempo, but no matter what white moves, a checkmate is coming, and white is totally lost. So again, it's very important to know this motif. There is a queen controlling this file. The other queen is in the corner, cannot do anything. And our king give opposition to the white king. We will use this as well for the case when it's the bishop pawns. Okay, now the bishop pawn, which is actually I think the most complicated out of all the queen versus 7 rank pawn endgames. Here, let me show you the stalemate motif first. If the king is too far away from the pawn, then it's a draw, as is this case, because you can give a check to the king, and then here black got a tempo, but that's it. That's all black's gonna get in terms of tempo, because the usual technique of forking the pawn and the king in other files where the pawn is in other files, then the king has to protect this pawn, right? But here the king actually has king h8, and black cannot really do anything. There is no free tempo. If the king moves, then white will just promote. If you take, then obviously it's a stalemate here. So in this case, when the king is far away, then it's a draw. Now let's talk about the case where we can use the technique we talked about earlier, but still the king has to be closer to the white king. How much closer does the black king need to be for black to win this endgame? The answer is that black king needs to be within 1 square away from e7 and g6. Well, assuming that it's an f pawn, obviously. If it's the other pawn, then it's a mirror image of that, if that makes sense. So here the technique is actually the same as before. First we put our queen on the 7th rank, and then white goes king g8, trying to promote. And the best move here is king g6. We let it promote. If it promotes to a queen, then we simply give checkmate. And I should mention here that if white wants to be cheeky, it can promote to a knight, giving a check. But I mean, obviously this is just lost, right? Like you have a knight against a queen, so black is winning in all situations here. Now, if blacking is on the other side instead, then we just use the usual technique, which is keep giving a check and then try to make the king go to king e7 so that it controls the promotion squares. Let's show it. So queen g4 check, king f6, queen f4 check, And then here is already winning, right? This one is probably the simplest out of the bishop pawn endgame. Okay, now let's talk about condition when white king is on the wrong side. By wrong side, I mean that here when bishop pawn is the f-file pawn, then h8 is a stalemate square, and the white king is on this side. We have talked about the conditions where the white king is on the right side, and here when the white king is on the wrong side, then obviously the winning condition is much easier for black. The winning condition here is simply that the black king must be within 2 squares from g6 and d7 for f pawn. If the pawn is on the c file, so here, then the winning condition is 2 squares from e7 and b6. When black king is 2 squares away from g6, the right sequence to win involves bringing the white king to the other side of the pawn and then checkmating it there. Let's see this in action. Queen a7 check, king e8, queen b8 check, king e7, queen e5 check, king d7, queen f6. Now the white king has to come closer to guard the pawn, king e8, and queen e6. This is the point of the whole sequence so far, which is forking the pawn and the king, so that the king goes in front of the pawn, and now the black king, I should say, will have a tempo to come closer. Here white best defense is king g7, and black should go queen e7. Again, if you remember the motif earlier, we want our queen to control the 7th rank. And now if king g8, then we use the same technique as earlier, which is king g6. White can promote, but then there's a checkmate on h7, and there's no other way for white. So black should win here. Okay, now the last case of queen versus 7th rank pawn endgames is where we have bishop pawn, and then the black king is within 2 squares of d7. This is also actually the most interesting case, I would say. Let's see how it works. Here we need to let white promote as before and then give it a checkmate on d7. So first, best move is queen a3, king e8. The white king obviously need to watch f8 square. If it goes anywhere else, then queen f8, and we don't need to use any technique, right? It's too simple. So best try for white is king e8, and queen a8 check, king e7, queen e4 check, king f8, and here a very good move is queen h7. We get a tempo for our king, we let white promote, and king c6. I'm sure you can see what's going to happen next, right? We've seen this motif like 4 or 5 times in this video alone. So we'll let it promote. Again, you can promote to knight if white wants to, but then stop it losing as well. So promote to a queen, and then we simply checkmate it on d7. Okay guys, that's all for queen versus 7th rank pawn endgames. I think the most important takeaway from this video is to really understand this motif, which is quite unintuitive. Basically, you let the opponent promote and then you checkmate it after. For that to happen, the queen needs to control the 7th rank and the king needs to be kind of nearby to give the opponent checkmate. That's all for me for this video. If you like this kind of content, please subscribe and please like. And I'll see you guys in another video. Thank you very much.